three parties press for peace in Ukraine. The Vatican, China, and Turkey all weigh in on seeking a peace. The war in Ukraine is in its third year, and since the fall of the Ukrainian city of Avdiivka to the Russian army in February, the operations in the war have slowed. This is partially due to the war being in a near stalemate, but it is also a factor of the season as the end of winter in the Ukraine brings about a near stop in mobility as the winter thaw brings mud. Between the fall of Avdiivka and the current lull in large-scale operations, there have been various movements attempting to restart peace negotiations. Despite the various parties, it does not appear that Ukraine or Russia is ready to seriously negotiate to end the war. In early March 2024, Swiss broadcaster RSI released a February interview with Pope Francis. During the interview, the subject of the war in Ukraine was raised, and Pope Francis stated that he believed that Ukraine should accept defeat and begin negotiations with Russia to end the war. He raised the emotional rhetoric by urging Ukraine to have, quote, the courage of the white flag, end quote. The response from the Ukraine Foreign Ministry, Dmytro Kuleba, was an angry response, stating that the Ukraine flag is blue and yellow and that they will fight and die for that flag. Kuleba added by questioning the moral authority of the Pope to speak on such issues, considering that in World War II the Vatican failed to act against the Nazis and that Ukraine will not repeat the mistakes of the Catholic Church and it will stand up to aggression. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky responded by stating that the Pope was virtually mediating a conflict while Ukrainians are experiencing the actual impact of a scorched and ruined Ukraine by Russian shells. The Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church responded to the Pope as well by stating that Ukrainian capitulation means death. Pope Francis' calls were dismissed out of hand. The Chinese joined the peace efforts in early March 2024 as well. Chinese Special Representative for Eurasian Affairs Li Wei traveled to Russia, Ukraine, and Europe to pursue his stated intention of building a consensus for peace talks to end the war. As U.S. aid is still being held up over border funding and the fall of Avdiivka, Li Wei wanted to evaluate if the position of the European countries to pursue peace had changed and if there is a role for China to become a peacemaker. The Chinese support to Russia has created a lot of resistance in Europe over China playing a major role in seeking a peace. The Ukrainian public position has also had a negative view of China, and China has basically ignored the Ukraine ambassador to China. President Zelensky is a little more open to the Chinese involvement, stating at the World Economic Forum that China had a role to play in peace talks. The condition is that Zelensky does not want Chinese proposal for peace, but Chinese support to his 10-point peace plan. Zelensky sees the Chinese role as accepting the Ukraine plan and then pressure Russia to accept. The other party that has been continuing in pursuit of peace is Turkey, and its President Recep Erdogan, who started it last month for Turkey to bring both Russia and Ukraine together to seek the diplomatic solution to ending the war. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stated that both Ukraine and Russia have reached their limits on what they can achieve through fighting, so the war at this point has no purpose other than creating more casualties. Fidan took the pragmatic approach that a ceasefire can be sought soon and then territorial claims can be negotiated later. Erdogan hosted Zelensky in Istanbul in early March, as well, with Zelensky seeking Turkish assistance in the war both materially and for security in the Black Sea for food shipments. The issue of peace talks was discussed with Erdogan, stating that his intent of bringing both Russia and Ukrainians together for face-to-face meetings with Turkey as the intermediary. Zelensky, for his part, rejected face-to-face meetings at this time and that any negotiations must follow his 10-point peace formula, which does not allow for face-to-face negotiations until Russia meets the peace formula demands. Russia's position regarding peace talks has been rather muted. The Russians publicly state that they are open to peace talks but provide no realistic preconditions for starting peace talks. Russia still falls back on stating that its objectives for invading Ukraine remain valid. The Ukrainians, for their part, are sticking to the unrealistic peace plan and regarded both Chinese and Vatican initiatives with suspicion and vitriol. The vitriolic response to the Vatican is somewhat understandable considering the inartful way the Pope Francis delivered his message guaranteed it was going to create ire in a country that has suffered from the invasion. What is apparent is that neither Russia nor Ukraine is at the point of wanting to compromise to find a way out of the war. This position is much more precarious for Ukraine compared to Russia. With its smaller population and economy versus Russia, Ukraine lacks the self-sufficiency, means that despite its will to fight, a lot of it is out of its hands. One miscalculation by the Ukrainians, and they will find themselves at the mercy of the Russians with no leverage in peace talks, and this will put the West in a precarious and volatile position as well.